Destination Newry, you're welcome. It's Rowan Hand, and this is the morning programme. I have to tell you, this is one of the most beautiful interviews that I could be doing on my programme here on Destination Newry. For I first met David McWall and his mum, Hazel McWall, is it 11 years ago, Hazel?
11 years, yeah.
I came to your home in Bessbrook to do an RTE nationwide programme about this young man who was just 2 at the time and who was waddling around the floor in his nappies and had, you were born with no right lower arm, and you were getting used to that as a baby. And your mum, when she discovered that the experts were saying, we'll give you a crude, rough hand for him, a hook, that'll be there for him, it'll be great. Hazel McWall said, no, you won't. And in that programme, your mummy pledged she was going to get you the very best hand in the world, and she's done that. And that's it there. Isn't that lovely? And you can shake hands as well. Can you see that, Andrew? Look at that. Well done. You're a James Bond type figure. It's all good. You're a bionic man, which is great. Now, you're the younger, Hazel. First of all, before Hazel, we'll deal with the man himself, first of all. David, you've got the arm now. You've been waiting for it for a very long time. What's your reaction? How do you feel about the whole thing? It must be a great sensation that you've got this piece of powerful kit. You must be very proud of it.
Yeah.
And what can you do with it?
Well, I can do stuff that I couldn't do before.
Yeah, let me see the movements you can do with it. Hold it up so that Andrew can see it. You see that, Andrew? Just you, Andrew, will come to that now. It's a lovely piece of engineering.
It is.
Now you can. Now you're thinking what you want to do. Same as I was thinking, I'm going to close my hand. You can think, I'm going to close my hand, and what happens? Wow, you do it. Yeah. And can you turn? I'm thinking I'm going to turn my wrist a wee bit. Can you do that? Can you make a turn?
I will not.
No, you can't. But you can, and you can tighten on. You can shake hands with people. You can lift things.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do your friends respond to it in school? Do they think it's cool?
Yeah.
What have they said to you?
So it's class out there, and then there's this fella that calls me like Robocop.
What is he called? Robocop?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is a Robocop, I tell you, big time, big time. But I mean, did you ever think that really your mummy would succeed and that you would get such a wonderful arm?
Yeah.
You knew she would be there for you?
Yeah.
And she would make it happen? Yeah. What do you think of her for doing this?
Good. Like, I'm happy, like I got my arm.
You're happy you got your arm. Hazel, it's been a long enough journey.
Has.
And that journey took you, first of all, to the hospital in Belfast. And you were told then what?
Basically, when he was born in Daisy Hill Hospital, they told me that within a year you referred to Musgrave Park Hospital. You'd see a consultant, and I didn't want to wait a year when David was just a few months old. So I took David to Musgrave Park when he was 3.5 months old.
You put him in the car, strapped him down, and away you went.
Yeah, and the consultant told me that there was absolutely nothing could be done at that stage to bring him back in a few years.
A few years?
Yeah, and they normally, when they start school, give them a hook.
A hook?
And I asked why, and they just told me that's the way the procedure, that's what we do. And I kept saying, well, is there nothing else you can actually do? No, except give him a doll's hand when he's a year old. And I says, what about now? Oh, we don't do anything like that now. And I says, well, I think it'd be a good idea to put a doll's hand on him at 3 months old. You're not getting it. And I was sitting there thinking, like, this is a consultant and they're telling me I can't have this. So I insisted, and David got the little doll's hand out of Musgrave when he was a few months old. And then gradually I tried to get functional hands, and I went to England. I took David to England to do a bit of research.
How old was he?
David would have been, I would say, 18 months, less than 2 years old. I took him on the plane to England. I went to Scotland to find out about the prosthetics in Scotland. I also went to Dorset Orthopaedic as well. This was me, a mother, sitting thinking, what am I going to do? I have no idea what's happening here. There was no guidelines to follow. There was just basically, oh, the consultant in Belfast, you have to do it a certain way and that's it. So I decided to do the investigations myself. I didn't have any help or support. I done it all by myself and took David with me and met various people in England, and they explained all about prosthetics. Came back to Northern Ireland, asked for different functional hands for David, and I came up against a closed door. And everything was, we don't do it that way.
And why do you think they didn't do it that way? Was it a matter of finance or something?
No, I think what happened was, when I look back now, I think Northern Ireland was so set in their criteria, in the way that they done things, it became a set pattern. That's just follow the guidelines, follow the book form. And of course I can understand professionals have their own way of doing things, but as a parent, I was thinking, well, David is only a child. Surely he'd need something at a young age to get used to it.
Yeah.
Well, they were sort of contradicting that by saying, oh no, wait till he's 3 or 4, then we'll put something on. And I was saying, but sure, how is he going to get used to something at 3 or 4 when he should have it on earlier? Because then we'd be like second nature, and they were disagreeing with what I was saying at the time.
But there's very little intellectual basis for a disagreement on that. What you're saying makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense as a parent, thinking, well, if he gets it early enough, he'll be getting used to it. This is the way I was looking at it. And they were saying, no, the way we work it is when they're older, they get it. And I says, well, I don't agree with that. And I kept saying, why? And they said, so that's just the way it is. And I kept questioning every single thing.
And they kept rebuffing you.
They basically said, when I went to get a functional hand, they told me, the consultant told me, he says, I'm not spending £5,000 on your son. And I remember...
Was he that crude?
Yes, he said that to me. And I says, well, it's not your £5,000.
Yeah.
And I says, I will get him the functional hand. He says, you'll not get it out of here. He actually said this to me. I actually made a formal complaint about this later on. And I said, so I will. He says, oh, Miss McWall, he says, you won't get it out of here. That's what I was up against.
How terrible. And there was no organisation that you could have went to seek support from?
No, there was no actual help and support, because in the whole of Northern Ireland, when this was happening, there was only 35 children. Small minority when you think about it. I went home, I cried my heart out about it, to be honest. I was a parent on my own with a child, trying to think, what am I going to do next? And I thought to myself, well, I can either lie down and cry or get up and do something about it. So I says, no, for David, I made him a promise, and I'm going to keep my promise to get him the best high-tech prosthetics available.
Andrew will come a little close in the camera. He'll give us a close-up of the hand as you and I continue to talk. Will you do that for me, Andrew? That'll be good, thank you. And you move your hand so that we can see it, David. You know, you're a very special guy, I tell you. It works beautifully. Right. And it's working basically from your own brain. You think, I want to move my hand, and it moves. That's the way it works. Science is your servant in this. It really is. It's doing what you want it to do. So, have things changed anything today, Hazel?
I think, to be honest, after all the basic publicity going back a few years ago, and the time Angela Smith was the Health Minister, a lot has changed. I still think, honestly, that for Northern Ireland to really come into the 21st century, in a sense, they would need Dorset orthopaedic prosthetics to come to Northern Ireland to help people, because at the end of the day, across the water has more availability and they're more high tech. Because if I had to listen to them, David wouldn't be where he is today.
Of course. But there was no way you were going to listen to them. You were a determined woman.
I wasn't going to let go.
Yeah. The process then, you got an arm that functioned.
Yeah, it had a functional movement.
And how did that first arm with the functional movement work?
That helped. Basically, it was just a pinch grip, open and close grip.
Yeah.
That's what happened. So he got used to something that was actually moving for his own, for his own self, for his own mind.
Yeah, but he couldn't. He had to move it with his other hand, had he?
No, there was like a little electrolobes inside, just a little movement.
Yeah.
And he got that when he was 3.5, 4 years old.
Just when he should have been just getting the doll's hand.
Yeah, I know.
Doing nothing.
Yeah, I was sort of...
That was a moment of victory for you.
It was. He was the youngest, actually. I remember being in the paper on Boxing Day as the youngest to get it.
Yeah.
Because normally they wouldn't give them until about 6 or 7.
Yes.
And it went from there. And because he had something on from such an early age, the actual muscles in the upper arm were so strong that when 2 years ago, when bionic brought this hand out, this is an adult hand, by the way, the version, the clinic in Dorset, I asked about it, and says, well, if his muscles is strong enough, we'll test him for it. And when they tested him, he hit everything so high, it was unreal.
Yeah.
So it stood to him in the end.
Stood to him in the early training, the early getting used to it, made all the difference.
Basically, yes, because I believe the earlier the prosthetic was put on, it helps.
Yeah. How much did this hand cost?
In total, this hand for him cost 18,500.
My goodness. My goodness. Where did that money come from?
Basically what happened, the board actually funded this for him now.
Thank God.
Thank God. Whereas originally I had funded for the one going back to pay for it because I had to. And then gradually, with looking at the whole picture, they decided to let him go across the water and be funded for the hand.
And there was one fool within the health service who told you a long time ago, that you wouldn't be getting 5,000 of them.
That's correct. And I thought to myself, well, we're living in Northern Ireland with government. Children are supposed to be prioritised for your child to get what's right for them. I don't think sometimes somebody sort of like should come along and make a decision which at the end of the day is wrong.
It was a rough decision.
It was a wrong call, to be
And it
honest.
was a wrong call. It was particularly brutal saying this to a mother and to a boy, both coming to terms with an awful dilemma in their lives.
It was very, very hard at the time. It was really, really upsetting and annoying. But the way I looked at it was I had to go sort of basically, I took on board what he said, but I realised he was wrong.
Yeah,
And then I fought for David to get everything from day one.
yeah. It's a great. What would you say to people out there now, if you give them a little instruction guide as to how to deal with similar problems, whether it be a hand or whether it be a special treatment that's needed for one of a child? What would you say to parents?
Well, I would say to parents, don't accept what you're being told straight away from a professional, from a consultant. I would query it. I wouldn't just settle for just what they are actually saying. Any child, no matter what disability it is, a parent knows what's right for their child. And I think that you need to question the health board, the funding. And if somebody's turned in, so you're not getting this, I would be contacting the board, I would be pushing doors open, and I would be asking questions. Just don't accept it the way it is, or you never get changes.
Had you any support at all from other sources along the way? Did politicians help you, for example?
Well, funny enough, I remember when I was living in Dermot Meadows, Dominic Bradley, the
Oh, yes.
SDLP, came around looking for votes. And I remember saying to him, well, I'll tell you what, because I wouldn't really pick parties or anything. I says, if you get me a meeting with the health minister, I'll think about voting for you.
Yeah.
And Dominic Bradley kept his promise.
You got the meeting?
9 months later, I met Angela Smith,
Yeah.
which was very helpful and did help children of Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And was helpful.
And how did it help children of Northern Ireland? How did it shake down?
Because the funding that was originally given to Musgrave Park Hospital was for the adults, not for the children. And because going back, because of the Oma bombing, a lot of it was given to the adults. So children were left last on the list. There was no real funding for children.
Yeah.
So when Angela Smith in 2007, she funded it, the funding was given for children.
She was Westminster.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and she was the health minister over there.
Yeah.
You were at the top, almost.
Yes.
Number 10 was the next one for you.
That's probably about right. I spoke to her, I showed her the difference of prosthetics over here and England, and she then gave funding for prosthetics in Northern Ireland. And then for the first time ever, in 2008, Musgrave brought silicone into Northern Ireland. Now, they never had silicone before. That's like a soft material that goes inside a socket of an arm or a leg.
Yeah.
And they brought that in for the first time.
Now we're at a situation where the people across the water in England, the makers of the arm, are saying to David, you're a wee bit special, David. We want you to help us.
That's right.
And what do they want him to do?
The company bionic that made this hand 2 years ago want him to actually run with the trial run for the child's version. Now, it's not out on the market yet, but the trial is coming up in a few weeks, and they want David, they're flying David over.
Wow.
To put on the child's version of the hand and for him to run with it for a few months to give them feedback on what he thinks of it and what they could change about it.
Do you know, that's a huge piece of research.
It is, actually.
That is so important because they're getting it right from the source.
That's it, yeah.
And what good, I think you should be charging them for this, David. I would say get something out of them for it. It's very important altogether. And how does this actually work? What's the mechanics of it? What's the electronics of it, Hazel?
Right, inside the upper, see up the upper arm here?
Yes.
Inside it up here, there's like little electrodes, little sensors, okay?
Yeah.
That actually touch his skin, that touch the muscles.
Yeah.
So when he thinks, he moves it.
Wow.
That's how it works. But you need very, very strong muscle power to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And that's all stood to him from day one since he had a prosthetic on.
Because that was getting used to it and training with it and all the rest of it.
That's right, yeah.
Did you ever give up hope, David?
No.
Tell me about the journey. What was the worst thing about realizing you had a difficulty with your arm? What was your down? Was there a time you were very, very sad about it, very worried about it, was there?
Well, not really, like, because I still like friends, like, you know, it says I'll be okay and all that there.
Yeah. And the lady sitting on your left there, she was good.
Yeah.
Would you like to pay a tribute to her now and tell her how much she means to you?
Thanks.
I know he does. He knows.
You're very good. The two of you together are wonderful. And see, I've seen it. I've seen it from the beginning. I've seen it from that first RTE program.
Yeah.
And I've seen how it's worked out. And I have this vision of you just toddling around in your house. You were that size there, climbing. You're actually climbing up onto the settee, and you were talking of your dreams.
Yes. Right.
Now your dreams have become a reality.
I know it's hard to believe. I mean, it's hard to believe to come from the start of it, with all the difficulties to get to the end of it, to get them this far.
And is there yet an organisation, an association in Northern Ireland of parents, concerned parents, who might want to come together and take things a stage further?
No, actually, there's nothing like that in Northern Ireland. Like a lot of the boards have support groups and parent things, right? But there's no actual group in Northern Ireland that will actually say, like, to help a parent. Listen, you have a situation there. We'll help you. Or there's some way you can keep going to get what you're supposed to get. There's nothing like that at the moment.
Sure, maybe that's to come.
Well, if anybody wants any information or detail, they can contact me at my website.
What's your website?
It's McWall.Hazel.
M-A-C?
Yeah, MC.
MC?
MC.
W-A-L-L.
Yeah,
McWall.
Hazel.
Hazel, H-A-Z-E-L.
At yahoo.com.
At yahoo.com. We're going to, in 2 seconds, we'll give you that again so that you can get the handle on it and make sure that you've got it down. And it is, it's important we give them that. It's McWall,
Yeah.
M-C-W-A-L-L.
Yeah.
Hazel, H-A-Z-E-L. At yahoo.com.
Yeah.
That's it. Well done. Thank you.
Thanks.
You first.
Thank you very much
God
for
bless
all
you.
your help. And
Not at
support
all. It's
down
my
the
joy to
years.
do so. Not at all. Thank you very much indeed. Good man. That's a lovely grip you've got. A good grip. Now, you stay with us till we bid the folk farewell.
Yeah.